What if everything you have ever been taught about capitalism is, well, just fundamentally wrong?
That is quite the question to kick things off with.
Right. But I want you to really think about it. Because from the time we are old enough to even understand money, we're told that competition is the ultimate driver of progress.
Oh, for sure. It's supposed to be the absolute engine of the free market.
Exactly. It forces excellence, it lowers prices, and it separates the winners from the losers. We basically worship competition. But
But what if the exact opposite is true?
yeah, what if competition is actually a destructive trap designed entirely for losers? And what if the only people who actually build the future are the ones who run away from competition as fast as humanly possible?
It's a genuinely uncomfortable premise to start with, isn't it? The idea that our most basic economic virtue,
Yeah.
competing hard and beating the other guy,
Right.
might actually be the very thing holding society back entirely.
It is uncomfortable, but it's absolutely fascinating. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. We are thrilled to have you with us today as we, well, dismantle some very comfortable assumptions.
Yeah, our mission today is to figure out how to stop copying what already exists in the world and instead figure out how to build the actual future.
And we are pulling this from a very striking piece of source material. It's a text called 0 to 1, Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future. It's by Peter Thiel with Blake Masters.
And honestly, just holding this book, the visual presentation sets a very aggressive tone right off the bat.
Oh, totally. You have this bold, unapologetic yellow cover, and starkly set against it is the title in sharp black and bright blue text. It really doesn't look like a standard dry business textbook.
No, not at all. It demands attention. There's a quote right on the front from the Times calling it a concise, thought-provoking book on entrepreneurship.
But as we dig into these notes, it becomes clear very quickly that this isn't just about how to file LLC paperwork or, pitch an angel investor.
Right. It is a sweeping philosophy about human progress.
Okay, let's unpack this central concept right away, because it's really the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about today. The entire philosophy rests on understanding the difference between moving from 1 to n versus moving from 0 to 1.
This is the mathematical distinction that really separates stagnation from revolution. Let's break down the mechanics of it a bit.
Yeah, let's do that.
So when you move from 1 to n, you're dealing with a known quantity. The one already exists. You are simply replicating it, iterating on it, adding to it to create any amount of things.
Like taking something we already know how to make and just making more of it.
Exactly. You're operating in a world where the rules, the market, and the product are completely established.
So it's globalization, essentially. Taking something that works in one place and copying it everywhere else.
Precisely. It is horizontal progress. But going from 0 to 1, well, that is vertical progress. It requires a completely different cognitive mechanism.
Because you're starting from scratch.
Right, you're starting with 0. A void, a blank space where absolutely no market exists. And you are creating a 1, something entirely unprecedented.
You aren't playing a better game. You are inventing a game that no one has ever seen before.
Exactly.
Let me try to put a concrete analogy on this. Imagine we are sitting in an office in the 1970s, right? And we are looking at a classic, clunky, mechanical typewriter.
Okay, I can picture that.
Moving from 1 to n would be a company analyzing that typewriter and saying, let's manufacture this in a different color, or let's engineer the springs so the keys are a microscopic fraction softer to press.
Or figuring out how to build the exact same typewriter, but in a factory that makes it maybe 5% cheaper.
Yes. It's copying the fundamental design, but just tweaking the variables. That's 1 to n. But going from 0 to 1 is looking at that typewriter, realizing the fundamental limitation of typing directly onto physical paper.
Turning your back on the machine entirely.
Exactly. And inventing the word processor.
That is the perfect distinction. And the reason this matters, the reason we're dedicating this entire deep dive to this concept is because creating entirely new things is the only way to drive true, enduring progress for humanity.
Right, because if all we do is copy...
If our entire society only focuses on moving from 1 to n, we inevitably stagnate. We might get more typewriters, and they might be slightly cheaper typewriters, but we never reach the era of personal computing.
Wow, yeah. The text makes a relentless argument here. Creating the future requires monopoly thinking. It requires deep technological shifts and a long-term vision that extends decades into the future.
People who move the needle for humanity do not copy. They create entirely new markets by solving problems in ways no one else has even conceptualized.
They're building the future, not just fighting for elbow room in the present. And I think that brings us to what is probably the most controversial point in the entire source material.
Which we touched on in the hook, yeah.
Right. So we now know that 0 to 1 means creating something completely new. So what is the primary obstacle stopping people from doing that?
You'd assume the text would say it's a lack of venture capital funding.
Or a lack of engineering talent, or maybe strict government regulation. But no, the text argues that the biggest obstacle is the ideology of competition.
It frames competition not as a healthy economic state, but as a genuinely destructive psychological and structural trap.
I really need to push back on this because it feels like it flies in the face of, well, basic economics.
It really does challenge the status quo.
I mean, since high school, we are taught that competition is the lifeblood of the free market. It's the reason we aren't all paying $10,000 for a single loaf of bread.
Right.
Competition forces companies to be efficient. It breeds excellence, and it transfers value directly to the consumer. So how can the text possibly justify the claim that competition is a bad thing?
What's fascinating here is that we've conflated the benefit to the consumer with the benefit to the creator.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
What the text does is force us to look at the actual mathematical reality of a highly competitive market, but from the perspective of the business trying to survive in it.
Not the person buying the product.
Right. Yes, textbooks will tell you competition drives efficiency and lowers prices. But what does that actually mean for the companies involved? It means a relentless, exhausting race to the bottom.
A race to the bottom in terms of profit.
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanics of a truly competitive industry. Think about the restaurant business in a major city, or even better, the U.S. airline industry.
Oh, the airlines are a great example.
In a perfectly competitive market, companies are selling a product that is fundamentally undifferentiated. A flight from New York to Chicago on Airline A is functionally identical to a flight on Airline B.
Right, a seat is a seat. You're just trying to get from point A to point B.
Because the companies aren't uniquely valuable, because they haven't gone from 0 to 1, they can only compete on price.
So they just constantly undercut each other. Airline A drops the ticket by $5, so Airline B drops it by $6.
And this endless battle absolutely annihilates profit margins. The U.S. airline industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue every year.
Yeah, they fly millions of people. They create massive value for society.
But historically, their profit margins are razor thin, sometimes mere pennies per passenger. They make just enough money to survive, to pay for fuel and routine maintenance, but they generate almost no surplus capital.
And without surplus capital,
They cannot fund the massive, risky research and development required to invent the next 0 to 1 technology. They are completely trapped in the present.
they're too busy checking the prices of the airline across the street to even think about inventing teleportation.
That's the psychological trap right there. Competition turns entrepreneurs into obsessed rivals. You start a business with a grand vision, but soon you are spending 90% of your time monitoring your competitors.
Copying their marketing campaigns, mimicking their minor feature updates.
Exactly. You lose sight of the future because you are locked in a daily street fight over a very small, shrinking pie.
Okay, the math makes total sense. If you are competing, your profits basically go to zero.
Yeah.
So if competition is a trap for losers fighting over scraps, what is the alternative? How do you actually escape?
Well, the alternative is a word that is universally reviled in modern culture. You build a monopoly.
The M word.
Yes, the M word.
But we need to be incredibly precise about how the source uses this word, because the immediate image that comes to mind is like the board game.
Right, the guy with the mustache.
Yeah, we picture a cartoonish billionaire in a top hat illegally cornering the market on water or electricity, artificially jacking up prices, and just exploiting helpless consumers. We think of coercion and government cronyism.
But the text draws a very sharp line between an illegal monopoly based on bullying and what it calls a creative monopoly.
A creative monopoly. Okay.
A creative monopoly doesn't dominate a market by holding back progress or bribing politicians. It dominates a specific niche because it has created a product or solved a problem so uniquely well that no one else can even offer a viable substitute.
It's a monopoly born of sheer, undeniable competence.
Exactly. Let's contrast the airlines with Google. Google has essentially held a monopoly on internet search for 2 decades now.
Yeah, pretty much.
And not because they made it illegal to build a search engine. Anyone can go build a search engine today.
Yeah.
But Google's core search algorithm, their 0 to 1 invention, was so vastly superior to everything else that they simply distanced themselves from the concept of competition.
And look at the mathematical result of that. While the airlines struggle for single-digit profit margins, Google enjoys massive, reliable profits.
Because they don't have a rival forcing them to discount their ads in a race to the bottom.
Precisely. And what do they do with those massive profits? They don't just sit on them in a giant vault. Those monopoly profits give them the financial freedom and the long-term time horizon to invest in wildly ambitious experimental projects.
Self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, extending human lifespans.
Projects that an airline struggling to pay for jet fuel could never even dream of attempting.
So the creative monopolist isn't a villain here. They are the engine of progress. They extract a high price for their innovation, sure, but in return, they actually push humanity forward.
It's such a brilliant reframing because it exposes a hidden truth about success. The text basically says that every truly successful, happy company is fundamentally unique.
They found a secret problem, they solved it, and they escaped the crowd.
Meanwhile, all struggling companies are exactly the same. They failed to differentiate themselves, and now they are bleeding to death in the trenches of direct competition.
If you want to create real value, you have to escape the crowd. But recognizing the trap of competition is only the first step. The text then forces us to confront why so many entrepreneurs voluntarily walk right into that trap.
And to understand that, we really have to examine historical trauma and our deeply flawed reliance on chance.
Yes. This brings us to a really fascinating historical autopsy. The source takes us back to the dot-com crash, the ghosts of 1999.
Now, for you listening, whether you were trading tech stocks during that era, or you were just a kid, or maybe you just read about it in a history book, we all know the broad strokes.
It was an era of absolute financial delirium.
Oh, completely. You could write a business plan on a napkin, slap a .com at the end of the name, and raise $50 million the next day. The exuberance was entirely irrational. And eventually, the bubble violently burst, wiping out trillions of dollars in wealth.
But the text argues something profound here. It argues that the failure wasn't just the crash itself. The real failure was the lesson the tech industry learned in the aftermath.
It was a collective psychological trauma.
And the industry drew exactly the wrong conclusions from it. The boom of the late 90s was essentially the ultimate one-to-end frenzy. People weren't actually building new 0-to-1 technologies.
No, they were taking standard existing business models like, I don't know, selling pet food.
Exactly. Putting a web page on top of it and then spending wildly to compete for eyeballs.
Right. They were running multi-million-dollar Super Bowl ads for companies that had zero revenue.
And when that chaotic, highly competitive house of cards collapsed, the survivors looked around at the wreckage and developed a very specific, very reactionary dogma.
The text outlines 4 specific false lessons that became the new gospel of Silicon Valley, and really the global business community as a whole.
Let's walk through those because they sound so familiar today that it's almost shocking to hear them criticized.
Yeah, let's do it.
First, the industry decided that you must make incremental advances. Grand visions were suddenly associated with the hubris of 1999. Anyone claiming they were going to change the world was viewed as a charlatan. The new goal was to just make small, safe, measurable tweaks to things that already existed.
Just play it safe. And second was the obsession with staying lean and flexible.
Right.
The idea that you shouldn't write a long-term business plan because you don't actually know what the market wants. You should just build a minimum viable product, throw it out there, and pivot based on whatever the users do.
Which is the ultimate abdication of planning.
Totally.
Third, the industry decided that the safest route was to improve on the competition rather than creating new markets. Instead of venturing into the unknown, just look at what a successful company is doing and try to do it slightly better.
Which drags everyone right back into the competition trap we just spent 10 minutes talking about.
Precisely. And the fourth false lesson was to focus entirely on the product, not on sales.
Oh, this is a big one.
The trauma of those Super Bowl ads for pet food websites made entrepreneurs terrified of marketing. They adopted the naive belief that if a product is actually good, it won't need an advertising budget. It will just magically spread via word of mouth.
So the hangover from 1999 essentially trained an entire generation of entrepreneurs to be terrified of their own shadows. It trained them to aim low, avoid bold plans, copy their neighbors, and just sort of hope for the best.
And this overcorrection leads directly into one of the most vital arguments in the text, which is the debate between luck and deliberate design.
This is a major wake-up call. The source tackles this head-on by essentially saying, you are not a lottery ticket.
Think about how our culture talks about massive success.
Yeah. When we look at a billionaire or a hugely successful artist or a dominant company, the default societal response is almost always, well, they were just in the right place at the right time.
Or they got lucky with the algorithm,
Right. We attribute their success to a random alignment of the universe.
which is an incredibly passive, almost comforting way to view the world. Because if success is just random chance, then it excuses our own failures. And it means we don't actually have to try to build a complex long-term plan.
I love the analogy we can use here to clarify this. It's the difference between treating your future like a game of roulette versus treating it like a game of chess.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it.
If you accept the post-1999 dogma, if you think you just need to stay lean, flexible, and wait for the market to tell you what to do, you are playing roulette. You are walking up to the table, placing your chips on black because a bunch of other people are putting their chips on black, and you are waiting for the wheel to spin.
You have zero agency over the outcome.
Exactly. You are treating your startup or your career as a lottery ticket. You are just hoping to get lucky.
But the great builders of the future completely reject the roulette wheel. They play chess.
In chess, there are no dice. There is no deck of cards to shuffle. There's no element of luck whatsoever.
The state of the board is completely visible to both players. Winning relies entirely on your ability to make deliberate plans, anticipate the consequences of your moves, and execute a focused strategy.
Steve Jobs didn't pivot his way into the iPhone.
No, he did not.
He didn't put a weird piece of glass out into the world and ask focus groups what they wanted it to do.
Yeah.
He had a deliberate, long-term, multi-year plan to force a very specific future into existence.
The text is absolutely adamant about this. The future doesn't just happen to us, it is designed. The most important entrepreneurs don't sit around hoping the universe hands them a favorable trend. They think independently.
They look at the chaotic state of the world, they identify a very specific outcome they want to achieve, and they meticulously map out the sequence of moves required to make that outcome a reality. I want to pause right here and talk directly to you listening to this right now. It is so easy to listen to business theories and relegate them to the realm of Silicon Valley CEOs. But I want you to apply this to your own life.
Apply it to your career, your personal projects, your side hustle.
Are you playing roulette or are you playing chess? Are you treating yourself like a lottery ticket, just showing up to your job, putting in average effort, and waiting for the right manager to magically notice you and hand you a promotion?
Or are you looking at the board, identifying exactly where you want to be in 5 years, and making deliberate, uncompromising moves to build a unique skill set that forces the market to value you?
The 0 to 1 mindset demands agency. It demands that you stop relying on luck.
But of course, you cannot formulate a deliberate, masterful chess plan if you don't actually understand the board better than your opponent. You cannot build a unique future if you don't possess a unique insight.
Which brings us to a critical mechanical question. If we accept that we need a deliberate plan to build something entirely new, how do we actually find the idea? Where do 0 to 1 ideas even come from?
This might be the most intellectually thrilling concept in the material. It's the concept of secrets.
Now, when we hear the word secret, we usually think of like a conspiracy theory or gossip or some password hidden in a vault somewhere.
But the text is using the word to describe a profound observation about human knowledge. The core argument is that there are important fundamental truths about the world that are hidden right in plain sight, but almost no one recognizes them.
We suffer from a modern illusion that the map of the world is basically fully drawn. We assume that all the low-hanging fruit of innovation has already been picked.
The assumption is, well, if this was a good idea, a giant corporation with thousands of engineers would have already built it. Who am I to discover something new?
It's intellectual complacency. We just assume the consensus is always right.
Exactly. But the text argues that the consensus is frequently wrong, or at least wildly incomplete. There are still massive, world-changing secrets waiting to be discovered.
But finding them requires a methodology, right?
It requires a specific kind of intellectual bravery. You have to be willing to look at what everyone else assumes is a law of nature and ask, is this actually a permanent truth, or is it just a temporary convention that everyone is too lazy to question?
Give me a tangible example of what a business secret looks like in practice, because it can sound a bit mystical.
Let's look at a classic modern example. Though not explicitly in this text, it fits the framework perfectly. Airbnb.
Yeah, that's a good one.
In 2007, the absolute, unquestioned consensus of the hospitality industry, and really of society at large, was that you only stay in licensed, professionally managed hotels.
Yeah, the idea of a normal person allowing a complete stranger from the internet to come sleep in their spare bedroom was considered dangerous, absurd, and completely unviable as a business. That was the convention.
Everyone agreed that strangers equal danger.
But the founders of Airbnb discovered a secret. They realized that beneath the surface of that convention, there was a hidden truth.
Under the right circumstances, with the right digital trust mechanisms, people are actually incredibly willing to share their personal space for extra income.
And travelers are desperate for authentic, affordable local experiences. The rest of the world looked at a spare bedroom and just saw an empty room. They looked at it and saw a hidden, globally distributed hotel network.
That was a secret.
So finding a secret is about locating that one specific thing that you know to be absolutely true, but that the rest of the world passionately disagrees with you about.
Once you have that secret, that becomes the radioactive core of your 0 to 1 company. You build your chess plan entirely around it.
But having a secret and a plan isn't enough to guarantee you win the market. You have to strategize how you enter the market and how you hold it.
And this brings up another massive contradiction to conventional business wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to talk about the illusion of the first mover advantage.
Yes. Wait a minute. Isn't first mover advantage the golden rule of business? I mean, you have to be the pioneer. You have to be the first one to plant your flag in the new territory.
That's what we're taught, yeah.
If you are first, you capture the mind share, you capture the market, and you win. So why are we suddenly talking about being the last mover?
Because if we connect this to the historical reality of business, the text points out a rather brutal truth. Pioneers are usually the ones who end up with arrows in their backs.
It's a great visual. A little morbid, but great.
It is, and it's highly accurate.
Yeah.
Being the first company to introduce a concept to the market often means you are the one paying the massive, massive cost of educating the consumer.
You have to explain to them why they even need this thing.
Right, and you are the one discovering all the unexpected technical flaws in the first generation of the product. Being first doesn't matter at all if someone else comes along 18 months later, studies all of your very expensive mistakes, and releases a product that is significantly better.
Think about social media. MySpace was a massive first mover. They educated the entire world on what a social profile was.
And then Facebook came along, observed the clunky interface and the chaotic coding of MySpace.
Built a cleaner, exclusive, more stable platform, and completely obliterated them. MySpace was first. Facebook was last.
The goal of a 0 to 1 company is not to be the first to try something. The goal is to be the last major company to ever need to invent it. You want to make the definitive product.
You want to create a creative monopoly so dominant that the category is essentially closed.
But how do you actually enforce that? How do you become the last mover and hold off competitors for decades? The Times doesn't just say, be the best. It outlines specific structural moats, right? It does. It details 4 specific mechanisms of long-term monopoly dominance. The first is proprietary technology.
Okay, what does that look like?
Your 0 to 1 invention cannot just be a 20% improvement over the alternative. The text argues it must be at least 10 times better than the closest substitute.
10 times? That's a huge leap.
If it's only slightly better, consumers just won't go through the friction of switching their habits.
Yeah.
It has to be an undeniable order of magnitude leap.
Like moving from typing on a typewriter to typing on a computer. It's not a little better. It's a completely different universe of efficiency.
Exactly. The second mechanism is network effects. This is absolutely crucial in the modern economy. A network effect occurs when a product becomes inherently more valuable to its users simply because more people are using it.
Let's walk through the mechanics of that because it's a term that gets thrown around a lot in Silicon Valley.
Think of a telephone. If you are the only person on Earth who owns a telephone, it is completely useless. It's a fancy paperweight.
Right.
But the moment a second person buys one, the value of your phone increases because now you can actually call someone. If 1 million people buy one, the value explodes.
Facebook is the ultimate example here. Even if a competitor launched a social network tomorrow with a slightly better user interface, you wouldn't switch because none of your friends are on it. The network itself is the moat.
It creates an almost impenetrable barrier to entry for anyone trying to compete with you.
Okay, what are the other 2 mechanisms?
The third is economies of scale. A monopoly business should get stronger as it gets bigger. Software is the perfect example here. It might cost millions of dollars to write the code for a new program, but the marginal cost of producing the second copy or the millionth copy is practically zero.
As you scale, your fixed costs are spread over more sales and your profitability just skyrockets.
Precisely. Contrast that with, say, a yoga studio. If a yoga studio wants to double its revenue, it has to rent twice as much space and hire twice as many instructors.
Yeah.
It doesn't scale easily. It doesn't have an economy of scale.
Right. And the final mechanism.
The final mechanism is branding. Creating a brand that is so universally recognized and trusted that it becomes synonymous with the category itself. Apple is the master of this.
Oh, without a doubt.
Their brand commands an inherent premium that competitors simply cannot replicate, regardless of the actual technical specifications of their devices.
So if you combine proprietary technology that is 10 times better, you build a network effects, you design the business to scale exponentially, and you wrap it all in an iconic brand.
You become a fortress. You become the last mover.
Okay, let's take a breath and synthesize where we are. Because we've covered a lot of ground, we have a solid theoretical blueprint now. We know we must reject the urge to copy. We must formulate a deliberate chess-like plan.
We must seek out a hidden secret about the world.
And we must use that secret to build a creative monopoly with deep structural moats to become the last mover.
That is a beautiful blueprint.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because a blueprint is just paper. Now we have to transition into the messy, complicated reality of execution. Who actually builds this thing?
Right, because an idea, no matter how brilliant, is just a hallucination until human beings actually construct it.
And human beings are inherently chaotic. This is where the text pivots from macroeconomics into the profoundly human mechanics of starting a company.
Yes, chapters on foundations and the mechanics of mafia. Because the truth is, you can't just gather the 5 smartest engineers you can find, throw them in a garage with some venture capital, and expect a 0 to 1 miracle to magically emerge.
Human dynamics are incredibly fragile.
Mm-hmm.
The source emphasizes that the initial foundations you lay down on day one will completely dictate whether the company survives or self-destructs.
And it breaks this down into understanding the difference between ownership, possession, and control.
Okay, break that down for me.
In a startup, the founders usually have ownership. They own the equity, the employees often have possession. They're the ones doing the daily work, writing the code, building the product. And the board of directors, or the investors, have control. They govern the overarching direction of the company.
And the problem arises when those 3 groups are not perfectly aligned. Let's bring back our analogy from earlier. Building a startup is very much like forming a rock band.
Oh, I love this analogy.
You can go out and recruit the absolute greatest, most technically proficient drummer on the planet, and you can find a lead guitarist who is a certified musical genius. Individually, they are spectacular.
But if their visions aren't aligned,
Exactly. If the drummer is passionately committed to playing complex, 20-minute avant-garde jazz solos, and the guitarist is absolutely determined to play fast, aggressive heavy metal,
it does not matter how talented they are.
their incentives are completely different. When they get on stage, the band will sound terrible. They will fight over the set list constantly. The recording sessions will be utterly toxic, and eventually the band will inevitably break up. The foundation was cracked from the start.
In a startup, if your visionary CEO wants to spend 10 years building a world-changing creative monopoly, but your early venture capital investors are just looking to hype up the valuation and sell the company next year for a quick payout,
The band breaks up. If the founders don't share the same core secret, the foundation fails.
alignment of incentives is paramount. And the text points to a very specific, legendary example to illustrate what happens when alignment is perfect. The PayPal team.
The PayPal mafia.
Yes. This was a specific group of exceptionally talented individuals who built PayPal in the late 90s and early 2000s, and then went on to found or fund an absurd number of massively influential companies. Tesla, LinkedIn, YouTube, Yelp, Palantir.
It's an insane track record.
The text, which was written by one of those founders, analyzes why they were so wildly effective. It wasn't just that they had high IQs, it was the culture. They operated almost like a cult or a mafia.
Which honestly sounds intense. Maybe even a little problematic to a modern HR department.
It was intense. But the point is that they had a fiercely shared mission. They didn't just work together, they were bound by an ideology. They believed they were building something that genuinely mattered, and they demanded absolute excellence from each other.
They hired people who were not just technically competent, but who perfectly fit the specific, slightly eccentric culture they were building.
They were completely aligned toward a singular dominant goal.
The shared mission is the music they all agree to play. And the person who writes that music, the person who establishes that intense culture, is the founder. This leads us to an incredibly fascinating psychological analysis in the text: the nature of the founders themselves, the founder's paradox.
If you look at the people who actually drag these 0 to 1 companies into existence, they are rarely what society would consider normal, well-adjusted people.
They are usually people who operate on the extremes.
Precisely. The text explores the genuinely quirky, often highly eccentric nature of great founders. They're often deeply contrarian. They can be incredibly charismatic but deeply introverted. They are often perceived simultaneously as insiders and outsiders.
And there is a very functional reason for this,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Think about what we are asking a founder to do. We're asking them to look at the entire consensus of the world, declare that the world is wrong, discover a hidden secret, and then possess the almost irrational determination to convince investors, employees, and customers to follow them into the unknown.
You need someone who is a little bit crazy to believe they can actually bend reality to their will. A perfectly rational, risk-averse, well-adjusted person looks at the statistical probability of a startup failing and says, "No thanks, I go work at a bank."
You need the eccentric visionary to spark the fire.
But herein lies the paradox. That same fiery, uncompromising, almost dictatorial leadership style that is absolutely necessary to spark the company into existence.
Is the exact same trait that can burn the company to the ground once it scales.
It's the Achilles archetype. Their greatest strength is their fatal flaw.
Exactly. We saw this with Steve Jobs in his early days at Apple. The uncompromising vision built the Macintosh, but the abrasive, volatile personality ultimately led to his ousting.
The paradox is that the startup needs the eccentric visionary to go from 0 to 1. But to survive the long journey from 1 to N, to scale the company, manage thousands of employees, and maintain operational discipline,
That intense personality must be carefully balanced. The founder is the spark plug, but the foundational team, the management, the board, they are the engine block. They have to contain that explosive energy and channel it into forward momentum without extinguishing the fire completely.
it is a phenomenal high-wire act of human psychology. So let's assume for a moment that our hypothetical startup manages to pull off this high-wire act.
Let's assume that.
The quirky, visionary founder leads a highly aligned mafia team. They use their unique secret to build proprietary technology that is 10 times better than anything else. They have a product that the world has truly never seen before. The 0 to 1 creation is sitting right there on the table.
It's ready to go.
Now, we have to look at what happens when this pristine, perfect technological idea makes contact with the messy, unforgiving reality of the market.
The collision with the real world.
Yes. And I feel the need to pause here and ask a question that I think a lot of brilliant engineers and inventors harbor in their hearts. Wait, if a 0 to 1 product is truly revolutionary, if it is objectively a miracle, shouldn't it just sell itself?
That's a very common assumption.
Why do we need to worry about the gritty, somewhat sleazy details of sales, marketing, and distribution? Doesn't the sheer superiority of the product guarantee its success?
What you are articulating is the most persistent, romantic, and frankly dangerous myth in the entire history of technology. It is the idea that if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door.
It's a comforting thought for an introverted engineer.
It is comforting, and the text systematically, ruthlessly dismantles it. The harsh truth is, technology alone is never enough.
Wait, never.
Yeah.
Even if it's an absolute miracle.
Never. Because human beings are not perfectly rational, calculating machines who instantly adopt the best available option.
Right, we're complicated.
Human beings are creatures of deep habit. We are busy, we are distracted by a million different signals, and we are inherently skeptical of anything new. The text argues forcefully that startups absolutely must have an effective distribution strategy built into the DNA of the product from day one.
It's like having the ultimate cure for a deadly disease, but you lock it in a titanium safe at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It literally does not matter how effective the biological cure is if you have no mechanism to transport it from the lab into the bloodstream of the patient.
The distribution is just as important as the invention.
Precisely. You can have the most revolutionary product in human history, but it will fail completely if customers never hear about it, if the sales pitch doesn't explain why they need it, or if the process of purchasing it is too filled with friction.
The text breaks down distribution into different scales. If you are selling a $10 million enterprise software system, you need complex personal sales, CEOs talking to CEOs. If you are selling a $50 app, you need viral marketing loops, but you must have a plan.
And the source provides a very sobering, multi-billion-dollar reality check on this exact dynamic. It uses the failure of the clean technology boom of the 2000s as the ultimate autopsy of the build it and they will come myth.
It is a brutal but necessary case study. During the 2000s, billions of dollars were poured into green energy startups, solar panels, new battery technologies. People assumed that because the mission was noble, saving the planet, and the technology was cleaner, success was inevitable.
It was assumed the market would naturally adopt it because it was good.
But the vast majority of those companies went bankrupt.
And the text analyzes why. It wasn't just a failure of imagination, it was a failure of business mechanics. The source argues that successful businesses, regardless of how morally righteous their goals might be, require 4 solid pillars to stand on.
And the clean tech industry overwhelmingly failed on almost all of them.
Let's walk through the pillars because this is the ultimate litmus test for any idea.
First, you need strong proprietary technology, a real 0-to-1 breakthrough. Most clean tech companies didn't have this. They had solar panels that were maybe 20% more efficient than the existing ones.
So they were playing a 1-to-N game.
Trying to compete on thin margins with massive, heavily subsidized overseas manufacturers. They didn't have a 10x improvement.
So they fell into the competition trap right out of the gate.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Second, you need proper timing. Is the macroeconomic world actually ready to adopt this technology, or are you 20 years too early? Many clean tech companies relied on the assumption of massive government subsidies that either dried up or changed.
Third, you need clear market demand, a path to a monopoly. Who is the specific, small niche of customers who absolutely must buy this product right now?
Clean tech companies often aimed broadly at everyone who uses electricity, which meant they were competing with the entrenched massive fossil fuel grid. They couldn't establish a beachhead monopoly.
And the fourth pillar is distribution.
Critical distribution. How does the product get from your factory onto the roof of a suburban home efficiently? Many of these companies had brilliant engineers who viewed sales as beneath them.
They lacked the distribution strategy to actually acquire customers at a cost that made the business viable.
They relied on the build it, and they will come myth, and the market simply ignored them. They had the moral high ground, but they lacked business reality.
It's a tragic example of playing roulette when they desperately needed to be playing chess. And speaking of reality checks, we cannot do a deep dive into building the future without talking about how the money actually flows.
The fuel for these 0-to-1 engines.
The text has a section bluntly titled, Follow the Money, which breaks down the mindset of venture capital. Now, venture capitalists are the people who fund these wild, risky 0-to-1 ideas. But they do not operate like a normal bank.
No, they don't.
If you go to a bank for a mortgage, the bank expects you to pay it back slowly with a little bit of interest. It's a linear expectation. Venture capital operates on a mathematical reality called the power law.
And if you want to understand how the modern tech world functions, you must understand the power law. It is the invisible gravity of Silicon Valley.
Let's explain the mechanics of it. Let's say I am a venture capitalist. I have a fund of $100 million. I know that investing in startups is insanely risky, so I don't put all my money into one company. I spread it out.
Right, diversification.
I invest $10 million into 10 different startups. What happens next?
Under the power law, the distribution of outcomes is completely skewed. It does not look like a normal bell curve where most companies do okay. The brutal reality is that out of your 10 companies, probably 6 or 7 of them will fail completely.
Completely to zero.
They will run out of money. They will realize their secret wasn't true, and they will go to absolute zero.
So I've just lost $60 or $70 million. I'm sweating.
Yes, you are. Now, 2 or 3 of the remaining companies might do decently well. They might build a nice product, survive, and eventually sell for a modest profit. They might return your $10 million, maybe give you $15 million back.
But they don't cover the massive losses of the failures.
So how does the venture capitalist stay in business? Because of the one remaining company.
The outlier.
One of those 10 companies will actually hit the 0-to-1 threshold. They will discover a massive secret, build a creative monopoly, and establish a network effect. They will become a generational company.
And that single company won't just return your $10 million. It will return $200 million or $500 million.
The single biggest winner in the portfolio will generate a return that is larger than all the other 9 companies combined.
That is the power law. The extreme outlier dominates everything. And because of this harsh mathematical reality, the text issues a very strong warning to anyone starting a company or anyone taking venture capital money. You cannot aim for average results.
Because if you aim for a modest success, you actually break the math of the VC fund.
Mm.
The investor needs you to have the potential to become that massive outlier.
Right. If you are starting a venture-backed company, you must swing for the fences. You must build a business that has the theoretical capacity to become a massive, dominant monopoly.
Yeah.
Go big or go home isn't a motivational poster in this ecosystem. It is a strict financial necessity dictated by the power law.
It's an intimidating reality.
We are talking about building massive, dominant, world-altering technologies. We are talking about escaping competition and creating monopolies. And as we push toward these zero-to-one innovations, especially in the modern era of artificial intelligence and automation, there is a very deep, lingering societal fear.
If we are building these incredibly powerful technological systems, what happens to the human beings?
This brings us to a vital philosophical point in the text: man and machine. As technology accelerates, there is a pervasive fear that human beings are engineering our own obsolescence.
Right. It's the classic science fiction dystopia. The machines get smarter, they take all our jobs, and eventually they take over entirely. We become completely redundant.
But the text pivots sharply away from that fatalistic fear. It presents a deeply optimistic, structural view of the relationship between humanity and technology.
It argues that computers and advanced technologies are not rivals. They are tools. They are meant to complement humans, not replace them completely.
Explain the difference. Why aren't they just replacing us?
Because human beings and machines excel at fundamentally structurally different things. A computer is essentially an incredibly fast calculator. It is unmatched at processing massive data sets, finding obscure statistical patterns in millions of rows of numbers, and executing repetitive tasks with flawless precision.
But a computer has no agency. It has no intuition.
It doesn't know why it's processing the data.
Exactly. Humans, on the other hand, are terrible at processing millions of data points quickly. But humans excel at complex problem solving. We excel at making holistic judgments, understanding nuance, reading human emotion.
And crucially, we are the only ones capable of generating original zero-to-one ideas. A computer cannot discover a secret about human nature. It can only process the data you feed it.
So the goal isn't to build a machine that replaces the human. The goal is to build a machine that supercharges the human.
The text points to the fraud detection systems built at PayPal, and later the intelligence analysis software built at Palantir as the ultimate examples of this symbiosis.
They didn't try to build an AI that autonomously made every decision, right?
No, they used the massive processing power of the computer to sift through millions of transactions and flag the highly suspicious anomalies. Then, they handed those flagged anomalies over to a human analyst who used intuition and judgment to make the final call.
The absolute best results, the most powerful companies, and the greatest advancements for humanity happen when humans and machines work together, complementing each other's distinct strengths. It is a symbiosis, not a competition.
It's the human being holding the brush, deciding what the painting should be, but the machine is the new, impossibly vibrant paint that allows them to create a masterpiece that was previously unimaginable.
We are still the artists. And that realization brings us to the culmination of our journey today. We have covered a truly monumental amount of ground.
We really have. We've explored a complete framework for building the future.
As the source lays out, if you want to drive true progress, you must fundamentally reject the comfortable, stagnant urge to simply copy what your neighbor is doing. You have to reject the one-to-N mindset.
You must bravely seek out the hidden secrets in the world, questioning the conventions that everyone else accepts as truth.
You must use that secret to build a uniquely valuable product that solves a real problem. You must fiercely avoid the margin-destroying trap of endless competition by aiming to become a creative monopoly.
You have to assemble an aligned, deeply committed mafia, a team bound by a shared ideology, led by a visionary founder who can balance their eccentric fire with operational discipline.
And you must have a deliberate, chess-like plan to distribute that vision to the world, recognizing that the best technology still requires a path to the customer.
And through it all, you must wield technology as a tool to elevate human potential, not erase it.
It is a profound blueprint for monumental ambition. So, what does this all mean for you? We've talked a lot today about global monopolies, venture capital math, and billion-dollar tech companies.
Those are massive macroeconomic concepts.
But I want to bring this entire philosophy right back down to earth, right back to you, the listener, right now.
Because the philosophy of 0 to 1 isn't just restricted to Silicon Valley boardrooms or software engineers. It is a fundamental lens through which you can view your own trajectory.
Think about how this applies to your personal life, your career, your creative pursuits. We want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to mull over. Look honestly at where you are spending your time and energy right now. Are you spending your days competing in crowded rooms?
In your career, are you exhausted because you are just trying to be 5% better, or slightly faster, or marginally cheaper than the next person applying for the exact same job?
Are you trapped in your own personal one-to-none cycle, letting the roulette wheel dictate your future? Or are you willing to do the incredibly hard, often lonely work of discovering your own secrets?
Are you looking for the unique intersection of skills and insights that only you possess?
Are you brave enough to step out of the crowd, stop looking at what the person next to you is doing, and deliberately design a truly unique path? The challenge is to create a monopoly of your own value, to build something in your life that absolutely no one else can replicate.
The future is not something that just happens to you. It is something you build.
Stop copying the past. Go build your 0 to 1. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It has been an absolute privilege to explore these profound ideas with you and to challenge some of those deeply held assumptions. We'll be back next time to uncover more hidden truths. Until then, take care.